Namaskar. In this episode of Dil Se, we'll be talking about our economy. And as you know that we are, as an economy, part of the global structure, naturally the headwinds from other parts of the world impact us. What happens in the United States of America, what Trump says, impacts us. But apart from that, technology also decides as to what the economic trajectory of the world and of a nation should and must be. So therefore, there is a huge technological revolution that's taking place around the world. To what extent will that impact India is something that we'll try and explore. Over the years, I have come to the conclusion, at least in the context of my own country, that more and more we see the genesis of economic decisions being seeded in the politics of the country. We've seen that in the recent elections where, as you know, when the finance minister presented her budget, she gave a huge bonanza to the middle class of this country. I'm not opposed to it. But that's a fact that happened. And perhaps one of the reasons why that happened is because Delhi was going to vote. And the importance of getting power in Delhi was very important for the BJP. So this is something that they did to try and entice the middle class to vote for them. That's not the only factor. If you see, every political party is competing with each other to give freebies so that they can persuade people, induce people, entice people, apart from other things that they do in the course of an election campaign, to vote for them. So it's become a very competitive thing, and that's all, again, associated with politics. So to what extent will technology impact our economy? To what extent will the global cross-currents impact our economy? To what extent will what's happening within India and the political decision-making that's happening impact our economy? But apart from that, if you look at our constitution, you realize that the essential goals of any economy are actually embedded in the constitutional structure of our country. When we talk about equality, what do we mean? Equality of opportunity. How do people get equality of opportunity? By empowering each individual. Is our Indian economy catering to that concept of equality of opportunity? Then you have the concept of discrimination. In other words, the economic structure should be such that it should tend to reduce levels of discrimination within society. Then we have the concept of the economic resource of the community must subserve the common good. Now, that's a constitutional goal, but it's also an economic goal. Does the budget, does our economy actually cater to that goal? So these are some of the things that we're going to discuss today with three exceptional people who are development economists, people who know really how to develop skills in this country, what kind of investment should be made in education. And we've seen the trajectory of economic development in this country over years and years, and who are masters in the field in which they have dialogues. Now, the first, thank you very much, Sudiptoji. Dr. Sudipto Mandal is here with us, and he presently is the chairman of the Board of Governors at the Center for Development Studies, and is a non-resident senior fellow at the National Council of Applied Economic Research. He completed his graduation. We're both Stephanians. In 1969, we were together in college. Then you did your PhD at the Delhi School of Economics. You're a Fulbright scholar at the Yale University, a Joan Robinson Memorial Fellow at King's College, Cambridge University, held visiting assignments in so many places in Japan and The Hague. And you've had significant positions you were a member of the Fourth Finance Commission, where you contributed in shaping the financial relations between the center and state governments. You also served as acting chairman of the National Statistical Commission, and a significant portion of your career was spent at the Asian Development Bank in Manila, where you held various roles, ultimately serving as director in strategy and policy department. And you also, prior to the ADB, you were served as the Reserve Bank Chair Professor at the National Institute of Public Finance. I could go on and on and on. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here, Sudipto. Yeah, and of course you also write for the Mint, I believe, which Pooja too writes for. Santosh, thank you very much. What can I say about you? Again, development economist, renowned in your work, especially in the context of labor, employment, skill development, child poverty, economics of education. And you got your master's degree in the New School for Social Research in New York City, earned your PhD from Cambridge, and from 1991 to 2006, you served as the economic advisor in the United Nations in various capacities. And I believe you came back to India in 2006 and assumed the position of the Director General at the National Institute of Labor Economics Research and Development. And also you formerly were in the Institute of Applied Manpower Research under the Planning Commission in 2014. In academia, you're a professor of economics and chair the Center for Informal Sector and Labor Studies in the JNU. And you're currently a visiting professor of the Center of Development Studies, University of Bath. And you've authored several books and edited several books. So there we are. We have experts in the field. Pooja, thank you very much for being here. This is a rare combination. An outstanding journalist and also a very, very renowned economist. And you did your master's from the Delhi School of Economics. And prior to this, you completed your undergraduate and got a degree in economics. And you've contributed significantly to public discourse through your work in journalism, policy analysis, and authorship. You write for the Mint. You're a senior fellow consultant in the Indian Council for Research on International Economic Relations, focusing on economic reforms, and of course, the most important thing, you wrote this wonderful book, which I have read, called The Lost Decade, 2008 to 2018, how India's growth story devolved into growth without a story. So thank you very much, Pooja, for being here with us. This is a conversation that we have. We don't have to ask questions. We can just talk to each other. But let me start with you, Sudipto. How will the headwinds that are emanating from the United States in particular affect us?
There are many disruptions going on right now, including the technological ones that we started talking about. But surely the most disruptive is Mr. Trump. There's no question about it. But if you parse all the different things he's been saying, he's been promising and actually doing, and you see how it affects us, my sense is that it will be less damaging to us than we fear in the beginning. Let me give an example. The big thing that's going on between them and us is tariffs.
Yes.
And he's been threatening that, reciprocity, you have 25%, we'll have 25%, etc. Now, the thing is that having seen how we behave, we are likely to reduce our tariffs. And as an economist, I think that's a very good thing, because we have been saying for a long time that our tariffs are too high. They had been lowered during the reforms. Then they started climbing up.
Yes.
And I have to say that our present finance minister stopped raising it. It was a bit undecided this year, probably anticipating a little bit of what's going to happen.
That's because he was going to the United States.
He was going, so she has substantially reduced it.
Only a certain limited items.
Compared to what's been going on, it's actually a significant improvement, and I suspect now we'll be forced to do much more, and that's not a bad thing. That's what I had in mind.
Well, Indian industry,
lower
in the past, what's been happening. The Bombay Club has been.
Yes. The Bombay Club is not necessarily what is good for India.
I agree, but that's what they've been doing.
So it's very good for consumers, and it's very good for exporters, because when you lower tariffs, the people who are hurt are the industry which are protected, but it means that other industries which are exporting in national, they are actually relatively better off.
But if the rupee goes down to the level it's going down, it's going to have an inflationary effect on our economy.
Again, a rupee going down
It's a good thing.
is a very good thing.
I agree. But it's going to have an inflationary impact.
It could, yeah. Right now, the inflation scene is...
So you think that what Trump is saying, doing, is really not going to impact us much?
I'd qualify that. It's probably not going to hurt us as much as we are fearing.
But you look at it this way, he says, buy our F-35s. Now, these are...
Now, that's a
I'm
different
just telling
ballgame.
you, yeah, because Musk says, this is crap.
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, if our Air Force thinks it's not good thing to get...
But the question is your deficit. Your balance of trade is such that the Trump wants that, look, there should be some balance in that trade. So you have to buy oil from us, you have to buy gas from us, which we get
And
cheap from other
defense
countries.
products.
You have to buy the F-35s. That's not good for us.
No, that's not... So that's something. It's not as though it's not going to hurt us.
Yes.
But probably not hurt us as much as we are fearing. That's all I would say.
Santosh?
I tend to agree with most of what Sudipto has said. I think there's one thing that Sudipto has not mentioned, which I think is a cause of worry, certainly in the short run, which is the revised economic sanctions after he came to power on Russian oil. We have been increasing, you see, we used to import only 12% of our domestic needs from Russia. That has gone up to 40%. And we were paying for it in rupees, as you well know. And their price had been lowered because, of course, Russians were facing an international sanction. Now, the sense I get now is that this is already causing a series of ripple effects. One, when our PM was in DC, he was told by Trump that, look, we need to sell oil to you. We may face some pressure there. I have a feeling that we can offset that by just saying to the United States during the process of negotiation that, we are now going to start importing nuclear reactors, small nuclear reactors from you. So that's likely to happen. That's in our interest, and I think we should do that. Second, I don't think we should agree to importing from them for two reasons. One, the distribution cost will be much higher because transportation costs will be higher. Second, their prices will be higher. So, and this is a worry that Qatar is also facing. Yeah. That's why he's come here.
That's right.
Right? We know all this. Now, the point is that this will probably have some short-run impact. My suspicion is because he's put some restrictions on about 183 tankers of the Russian, which supply oil to us. But the Russians have 800 tankers. So, in other words, they have enough tankers and they may well, you see, it may well be that they may continue to supply to us later on, while we may sort of have some deals with the United States, not very much. It will be in our interest to continue to do this. And I have a feeling, I completely agree with Sudipto that, you see, we can import more from the United States. I don't believe the F-35 is a great idea. There may well be other products that we might be able to, high technology items.
Even on the F-35, they're not going to give us the technology.
I know, this is the problem. This is precisely the problem. You see, there's one additional point that I would make on the tariffs thing, which is additional to what Sudipto was saying, is this. The reason why I know Sudipto and I are on the same page on this, that the reason why we need to reduce tariffs is because while we had brought them down till about 20 years ago to an average rate of 10, under this government, they had gone up to about 25 on average.
Right.
However, in recent years, they have actually been bringing them down. This has been hurting us because, you see, this is a slightly technical point, but I'll not belabor it. The point really is, the government in the past had actually reduced tariffs on finished products. As a result, we were being flooded by finished products. What we needed to do was to reduce tariffs on intermediate products, so those products those intermediates can be used to produce domestically, and a whole series of our manufacturing sectors were being adversely impacted by what is called an inverted duty structure. the fact that we will now be reducing our tariffs will actually, and they should do it carefully on intermediates, that could help our manufacturing. But that means, very important point, we need to have an industrial policy which is not PLI. Performance-linked incentive scheme is not being successful. It is subsidy-driven. No East Asian country adopted it. I mean, okay, it's working in the case of iPhones. It's working in the case of Samsung, electronic equipment. But what this country needs is a much more comprehensive horizontal industrial policy. I mean, under this government, despite all the talk about Make in India, we've seen manufacturing as a contribution to GDP is actually falling.
Yes.
Manufacturing employment falling.
12% now.
Yeah, manufacturing employment falling, which is the opposite of what
we'll come to that a little later. I was
sure.
thinking in terms of, but in the context of what I said, the impact of politics on economics.
Right.
Now, if you look at it this way, Trump is talking about Iran, and I don't know what he's going to do with Iran. We get a lot of oil from Iran. We've got very good relations with Iran.
Right.
It's true of Russia as well.
Right.
Now, push comes to shove, if there is this attrition between the US and Iran, it's going to impact our relations as well and the economy here, right? So therefore, the politics of Trump is impacting not just the global economy, but it's impacting the rest of the world.
Absolutely.
And what do you say, Pooja, about that?
No, I agree, and I think it will also impact the domestic politics, because I think at some point the question of agriculture imports and exports to the US will come up, and I'm not sure how that stacks up. The reason India, we were given to believe, did not sign up the RCEP is because of agriculture products. And
that's
how
been
much
going on for years, actually.
Yeah, and so if there's going to be pressure now to reduce tariffs on imports from the US, and then how that will play out in the domestic politics with farmers being large vote bank, I don't know how that works out.
But tell me, we talked about Trump's politics, but let's talk about the technology revolution that's taking place. Let me start with you. That's going to impact us greatly. Yeah. And how are we going to deal with it?
How are we going to deal with it? It's impacting the politics, it's impacting the discourse, it's impacting business. Big tech is so powerful, and they're so close to him. We saw at his inauguration, all of the big top tech moguls were there, and they're going to push us into creating our privacy laws, our regulations that suit them, not us.
So how are we going to deal with it? Because we have a labor-intensive economy, essentially, right? Most of our workforce is in the rural areas. And if you adopt AI, how it's going to impact them? And the jobs that we have already will be lost in some sectors with AI coming in. But of course, they'll also gain. We'll also gain jobs. But I'm saying I really don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah, we don't know, but I'm optimistic about it. I think the number of jobs created will be greater than the number of jobs displaced, and the number of jobs displaced will probably, people will find something new to do. So I'm not so concerned on the jobs front with AI, but I'm more concerned on how that impacts the whole, I mean, we're seeing what's going on.
Social impact on it.
Social impact, and we are seeing what's going on in Europe. We are seeing how Europe wants to regulate big tech. We haven't seen that much progress in India yet.
India wants to regulate it too.
We want to, but do we have the capacity? Will we get the regulation right?
We may get it wrong, but with lots of things that have happened here are wrong. But you have to go to court and fight it all the time. But tell me, what do you think about this, the technology revolution?
I'm not so worried, actually. Honestly, I'm not so worried. Just like Pooja is not worried. Let me explain why. The fact of the matter is, let me first begin by talking about Observer Research Foundation study just before COVID, where they surveyed about 800 firms which were beginning to adopt either Industrial Revolution 4 technologies or digitization, digital technologies, which is a sort of digital technologies is the third industrial revolution. Industrial 4 is AI and all that. Point is that when they did this survey, the conclusion that they came to is very much what Pooja was suggesting, which is that Yes, some jobs are likely to be lost, but more jobs are likely to be created. This is the experience in Europe. The large.
At what level? I mean, the problem
I'm coming
is
to that.
you're right, but at what level?
I'm coming to that. You are right. The thing is that Industrial Revolution 4 technologies, particularly robotics, automation, etc., are being used in our country, but only in the production of electronic products and of automobiles. And this is the global phenomenon. So we are not different in that. Let us appreciate that some of this is going to continue, and it might be a good thing on the one hand, because it will, in those sectors which are high-tech sectors, it will perhaps we'll lose some jobs. But you're absolutely, you see, what we were saying earlier, particularly I was saying earlier, is that we need a horizontal industrial policy to absorb all the workers who are less skilled. That's precisely the point I was making, that if we don't do that on the one hand, then we can't create the jobs that we need to do, and especially in a context where we've seen that the growth rate has declined in the last 10 years. The growth rate has declined to 5.8% as opposed to the 7.8% that prevailed between 2004 to 14.
Different factors for that.
No, I know, but I'm saying the important point, Mr. Sibal, is the following, that over that period, the previous period, we were generating 7.5 million new non-farm jobs over that period. We didn't have this level of unemployment. The unemployment problem
We'll come to that a little later. At the moment, I want you to just sort of tell me something about this.
In addressing this whole question about this big shock thing, and it's AI, it's also the energy transmission,
Yes.
and it's the
Absolutely.
biotechnology revolution.
Correct.
Three going on together. I don't think historically we've ever been in this kind of huge, technological three things overriding. I want to make 2 points here. One is that, we have come very late to the party, especially where AI is concerned.
Absolutely.
If you look at what is going on between the United States and China in particular, and now they say that China is
Ahead.
probably ahead of these guys. We don't have a seat at the table.
Yes.
We've left it too late. And this is the problem with our economic policy making. It's all very short term.
Very
It's a bit cynical to say it's just till the next election, but in any case,
I was going to say that.
it does not think, certainly we don't think in medium to long term perspective, which is exactly what the Chinese do.
They have a 14 5-year plan already.
They have way ahead thinking, and that is why they are able to stand up to the United States and catch up, perhaps leave them behind. So this is the issue. Many of us are writing that the budget should.
Yeah, the budget doesn't even talk about it.
It should address, of course, immediate short-term problem, but it should also pay attention to what you need to do to invest in the long term.
No, they said 100 centers of AI.
Yeah,
that's what she announced.
I'm actually examining the fine print now, because a lot of this, as you know, in the speech, is optics and token. The real stuff
Allocations, what are the allocations?
Real stuff is in some 1,300 pages of budget documents.
Yeah.
So it'll take us time to really mine through all this. The other point is that this is the first time, especially with AI, that we're seeing a technology that is so far. I mean, this is wonderful 1,000-year history, Asimoglu and Johnson have written of the trend of technical progress over history.
Yeah.
And one of the fundamental aspects of it consistently is to reduce the role of labor all the time.
That's right.
The one difference this time is that now you're not going to reduce so much the share of, involvement in blue collar labor, but white collar labor. That's the first time. It's the brain power which you're trying to replace now with AI.
That's right.
Now, if you look at our situation, and I think Santoor was pointing to that, our really big problem of where employment is not keeping up with the growth of labor supply is not, with highly educated, skilled people.
Yeah, exactly.
It's with all these, young women and men who have very low skills and who can only do low-skilled jobs.
Correct.
And that's what we need to focus on. But all this stuff, focus on skills, make them AI intelligent, etc., is for a relatively small part of the workforce.
And niche sector of the economy will absorb all this. But what's going to happen on the ground unless you change our education structure? unless you have a
Yeah, absolutely.
new paradigm shift in
Exactly.
skill development.
Exactly.
Right? And there is no focus on that in this
Not at
budget.
all.
Right? And there's no focus of that in the speech of the finance
So you
minister
need
as well.
different kind of, I mean, if you want to, I mean, there are about, again, something I'm looking at fairly carefully, there are about 7 or 8 sectors outside agriculture which are very labor intensive and have a large share of the non-agricultural workforce. What we really need to do, and most of these, except for one, education and research, are really sectors where they will use low-skill workers. Land transport, trade, meaning, Vyapari, traders, tourism, construction, very big one. Now, for all these, you need, masons and,
just don't have them.
plumbers and so on, relatively low skilling. We don't have a serious program for them.
Yes, that's true.
And that's where you really need to create the mass jobs to absorb, our lens is always growth. You can look at growth of GDP, but you should look at growth of employment and growth of unemployment, which is almost as high as the growth of output.
Absolutely.
You remember when you were Minister of Education, you asked me to chair this task force where we created this National Skills Qualification
Yes, I
Framework.
remember
You remember?
that, yes.
We did that. They adopted it by the end of 2013. But I'm sorry to say that it's not been adopted by all the pillars of the skills ecosystem. And the way it's been adopted is nowhere corresponds to the kind of blueprint that we had laid out to them. It's very unfortunate. The way they're going about the skilling program is continues to be a focus on just churning out large numbers, quantity, while the quality is not improving. You remember when this government came to power, only 2.4% of all our current workers in the workforce had formally acquired vocational training or education. You know what that share is today? 3.4. Increased by 1 percentage point. What does that mean? And
We call it the lost decade, right?
so it's very sad. So there are so many things that have, in order to reduce the inequality that you began and the discrimination.
So we're coming to that.
Yeah.
The question is, does this budget address the issues of growth that the nation needs?
I didn't think so. I thought the makers of the budget on record said after the presentation of the budget that the budget was focused on addressing the feelings of the middle class so that they would feel they were contributing to income tax collections, and how that squares up with what the economy needs, and if it's at odds with what the economy needs was, if it was at all discussed internally. I've not seen a public discourse on that. And I'm not sure at a time when the finance minister has been reducing the fiscal deficit by compressing expenditure, public finances are so stressed, letting go of such a huge percentage of your taxpayers is what the economy needs. I thought this year's budget was a turning point in the role of politics in budget making. We've seen political considerations guide budget making in the past, sure, but such a huge percentage of the taxpayers being let go, keeping in mind an upcoming election, I thought was quite significant and not very usual.
Yeah, but I mean, let me ask you another question. That if you say that you're going to reduce the fiscal deficit to 4.8%, and you say that, look, we're giving this bonanza to the middle class, so lose a lot of revenue now in this process, and then you reduce your expenditure on education, or it's static, you increase it by 7% or 4% or 5%, or in health, which is fundamental to the economy. Now, my belief, and some people don't agree with it, is that unless you invest in education, health, skilling, these are fundamentals which will give you growth. Human capital, investment in human capital gives you greater growth and investment anywhere else. And there is no focus of that in this budget.
Well, of course you're right, but to be fair to our finance minister, there's never been any focus on this in any budget in the past.
I agree.
either.
I'm not.
So it's not just this.
No, we are talking about 6% GDP in education has never been.
I mean, it is. I mean, I think the biggest letdown of our civil society by our political leaders, and I don't mean this government.
No, I agree with you.
Throughout his,
Yes.
our independence India's history.
Yes.
Forget the colonial period. Is this one simple thing that we should have addressed? We didn't. You know, the original Education Commission, Kothari Commission, had talked about a pyramid structure where you first prepare your base of, basic, primary, blah, blah, blah.
don't have it.
We turned it on our head.
Exactly.
And we've never gone back on that. We are still, all these glittering institutions and so on are great. And they've served us very well. I don't want to knock it. But if your fundamentals are so weak in the foundation, I think this has been our biggest failure.
Since 1952,
Yes.
we have never invested in the basic fundamentals which give you growth.
We did begin after 1990, but for 40 years, you're right, the balance was in favor of higher education as opposed to
It
school
still is.
education.
It still is.
You're right.
I mean, we gave right
less
to
so.
education, but what do we see on the ground?
No, you're right, but less so, certainly for the last 20, which is the reason why you see, in 1991, please recall, 51% literacy rate is what we had. Now the point is,
74%, that's what it is.
well, that was 2011. Now that's also would have now gone to at least, it was 74% in 11. So we must be, in the region of 85% now.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah.
optimistic, I think.
But
It's optimistic.
I think the number is saying is probably broadly correct. But you see, literacy
Yeah, this
is
is
a
the
very
point.
poor.
This is
that's
the
right,
point.
What we're
That's
talking
right.
about.
This
I
is the
agree.
point.
The
Asar
look-
report tells
all
us
the-
what-
exactly.
This is the
the
point.
Asar
That's
reports
the point.
tell you that a class 8 kid can't read or do the
Class five.
arithmetic over class 5. That's where, and
Exactly.
we used to appear for these PISA tests and all that. We did so badly that they made some excuse. Oh, this is the Western culture, and withdrew. Who does the best in PISA? It is Singapore, it is Korea, it is China, it is all these Eastern countries. It's not the Western countries.
Right.
So it's an absolute,
So how do we deal with this issue? I mean, if you were the finance minister, what would you do?
The problem is that this is, it's not a sharp, sudden problem.
Yes.
As people say, we do very well when we manage a famine or a disaster, but we're very bad at dealing with, latent problems which continue year after year after year, because they are never election issues. You don't get votes based on, doing a good job on education and so on. I wish it would be. And really, I mean, at one stage...
Why would you not say that you give an ATG exemption to any industrial house that invests in education, and to what extent they want? You see huge investments coming into education.
There are many variations, but he was talking about industrial policy earlier. Instead of, if we shift our lens, instead of thinking of giving incentives to raise production, which is really in order to raise exports, you could also, in fact, she coined the term in the last budget of employment linked incentive. It was done in a very poor way, I thought. But if you go down that road and really give producers, and this would have to be largely, in these sectors we talked about, construction and a few other. Give them, you raise employment by X amount and we will give you, a handout, because you've done a good job.
Yeah, but employment you can only raise if the people are employable. And people will only be employable if you invest
That's right.
in education.
So both
this
have
is the
to
problem.
go together.
Right?
Or you have a serious, tourism is something we are trying to focus on. Get all these corporates who are running good hotels to really run good apprenticeship programs.
Exactly.
On a very large scale. Don't have to give them jobs afterwards. Somebody else will employ them.
Exactly.
But subsidize them.
Take,
to
for
do that.
example, the telecom sector. Now, you've got these towers all over the country, right? You will need people to maintain those towers.
Yeah.
You just skill them just to maintain towers, you will get employment, right? And this is true of several sectors of the economy. But they don't do that. They never think in those terms.
But that's primarily because, we haven't, in the government, we haven't thought about how to bring industry into this process. There are mechanisms available, evidence available from about 62 countries around the world, Mr. Simple. Not just, well, Germany, you see, we can't quite replicate their dual training system, but we can at least adopt, Sudipto, their duality principle. What is the duality principle? That, everyone who goes to school, not just goes to school, he is also expected to be given some on-the-job experience while he's at school. Or whenever you are in a training institution, you're also given industry experience, on-the-job experience. When you're being trained by people in a skilling institution,
ITIs in India.
ITIs, why can't we make sure that, and China does this, what I'm about to say, that you ensure that the ITI instructors themselves are expected to acquire some on-the-job experience. Because if they come with on-the-job experience, then they have understanding of what youngsters, when they enter the job market, will face. This is one thing. The second thing, I think, is the apprenticeship scheme. The 1961 Act has been terrible failure. A reason for that is that industry has not been forthcoming. So, a certain degree of subsidization by the government, but also, put the incentive structure in place. We can talk about what the nature of that incentive structure is, so that they actually take on apprentices. And Sudipta is absolutely right. Pehli naukri pakki is not a bad idea at all. Don't give them an unemployment allowance. That's a silly idea.
अब तो कोई नौकरी दे नहीं रहा, वो कह रहे हैं कि सब ad hoc होगा. Teacher भी ad hoc होंगे.
Sorry to be so cynical, but when there is so much political legitimacy for governments by just giving handouts, cash handouts,
Yes, this is the
why are
tragedy.
they going
This
to?
thing that you get votes by giving handouts.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. I mean, where will this? I mean, all governments have been doing it.
All government, So
But it was started in 2019 by PM Kisan. But you carry on.
No, but handouts for special interest groups and so on who are good vote banks is a very old, and it's not peculiar to India. It's very many countries you see this sort of thing happening. There are sort of really, and this goes much more, I think, to your territory of our constitution and so on. I mean, if you have an incentive system, where after a politician, that's his career, right? He has to win elections to remain, and nothing wrong with that. But if his incentive system is my time more than 3 years.
If the focus on growth or economy is based on what political decision is going to take, there's everything wrong with it, if you ask me.
But that's how it is, no? That's how
It's unfortunate, no?
Yeah.
That's most unfortunate.
So now
that
we are
your
getting into
politics
critique of
determines your economics.
But you will recall you were talking about why isn't the politics going in favor of health and education, right?
Yes.
Can we please look at the southern states who all invested in both health as well as education? It's not just
Tamil
Kerala.
Nadu is a great example.
Absolutely, but it's not just Tamil Nadu, it's also Karnataka, it's also Andhra. And if we can demonstrate,
classic case is Kerala, of course.
I
Kerala,
agree with you.
yes.
But you see, systematically, if you look at the southern part of the country, including the west, who have all better education, better health outcome indicators than the north, they have grown faster, sir.
Yes.
Systematically over a 30-year period. I've done this empirical work which shows that from 1992 to 2019, they have grown at 7+% per annum over a 30-year period. While these northern Hindi belt states, by and large, of course excluding some of them, we won't go into that detail, have grown at 5 or less.
Yeah.
Now, they don't invest in health and education, and so we've got to ensure some more learning across our continent, because this divide in per capita terms is actually going like this. In per capita.
This is a very serious problem in a geopolitical sense within the country.
Yes.
We really now have two different countries in an
Yes,
economic sense.
emerging.
The southern states are a relatively advanced country.
Yeah, middle income country.
And what we used to call the Bimaru states are just getting left behind.
Yeah.
And political tensions based on this are bound to build up, especially, with you have
Already
this,
showing up.
you have this
Finance
delimitation exercise coming
that's
up.
going to be a serious
My
issue.
God, it's going to be a real problem.
Absolutely. In the run up to that, before the
What about,
delimitation.
Pooja, the women workforce in this country? That's
think,
another
yeah.
very, very serious issue.
Yeah, we talk a lot about bringing more women into the workforce so that itself supports the GDP. But when you have so much unemployment, every employer will prefer men to women. I mean, that's just the default. So what do? Do we give tax incentives for hiring
Why
more
is
women?
that? I mean, there's something where women are much better at it than men.
Women
Tea
are,
gardens, all
but you
the women
know,
are the-
no,
are
but
the-
you know,
are
on the
the-
way back home, on the commute, something happens. You know, you're responsible. The police will be at your door asking questions. Women are going to take leave when they are going to have babies. So many other things, and it's just the social thing. You know, it's always safer to
So it's a
hire
combination of patriarchy and
It's patriarchy.
narrow economic interests.
I think there's a World Bank study that found that these free bus rides, the pink slip scheme in some of the states,
Yeah,
including
in Delhi.
including Delhi,
Yeah.
did not lead to an increase in women labor force participation. Women went out to look for more work, but what it did is that the men in the family, you know, the things that they used to do, such as dropping children to school, they
The
palmed
women
off.
started doing it.
They palmed off those jobs. So women's actually workload at the home increased. Rather than them getting at least more free time, if not, you know, space to work.
Main reason for that is that overall jobs are not growing.
No, that's true.
That's really the problem, because, and it's inevitable that in a situation where jobs are not growing,
But you know, why will jobs grow unless you grow at 10% or 8%?
I agree,
How will jobs grow?
they will not.
Right, and if you grow at 8 to 10%, you can give more money in the pockets of ordinary people, right? Then also the economy will grow because they'll spend. But if your economy grows at 6%, and I said something very politically incorrect perhaps, and I made a speech in Parliament on the budget, and I said, okay, even if you don't do anything, Finance Minister, this economy will still grow at 6%.
You're absolutely right.
No, but that
I
is-
heard you do.
that is actually correct.
That's correct.
But equally, I think to think of, you know, going at 8 to 10% is also a pipe dream.
I agree, but I'm just saying, where's the direction in the budget?
So, since we are going to be in this 6 to 7% growth trajectory, regardless of what policymakers do, the one thing they can do is to nudge the system towards these more labor-intensive sectors we are just talking about: construction, tourism, land transport, trade, and all that. And which really will employ low-skilled people. Our workforce are all
Yeah,
low-skilled.
but again, in construction, there is technology happening there, big-time technology. Because
I know.
people want, you know, buildings to be built overnight, bridges to be built overnight. You know, it's less expensive. All you need is to have collaborations.
But
That's
this
why, sir,
6.5 is,
Despite that,
6.5 is?
I was just saying that, you know, can it not be more than 6.5? I see a certain, even when I have conversations in government with officials, there is this thing settling in that we can't do more than 6.5. Is that so?
you know, we've already been growing. We are, you know, certainly for a long time now have been one of the fastest growing major economies in the world at 6.5. The next fastest is China, which is growing at 4%.
You know,
But-
Sudipto,
I'm not
I don't buy that.
Is 7 so?
No, but it's a fact.
No, but what's the fact? You go from a low base, you'll be 6.5%. From a higher base, you'll be 4%, but it'll be much better than
No,
6.5.
fair enough, but
So you know
the
that.
point I was trying to make is actually this preoccupation with the growth rate itself, in my view,
It's meaningless.
is meaningless.
Yes.
We should look at growth of employment.
Yes.
That's what you
Absolutely.
should
That's what
focus
you
on.
should look at.
So
And-
I'm saying two things.
Sorry,
No,
go ahead.
No, two things need to happen, sir. They are the following. And one thing which we haven't talked about, and in a sense, Sudipto mentioned it with the employment-linked incentive scheme. But you know, even the employment-linked incentive scheme was all about the organized sector. The
Yeah.
sector which has been most impacted, or segment of our non-farm economy which
Yes.
has been most impacted, is the unorganized sector, which creates most of the jobs.
Absolutely.
And those are all MSMEs. Now the problem is neither the budget does anything about it, nor do policies, unfortunately, in the last 3 or 4 years do anything about it. If anything, both the demonetization, the GST, the lockdown, all had very adverse impacts. So what does it mean in terms of policy? 2 or 3 things. One, we need to make sure that SIDBI is really, the Small Industries Development Bank of India, is much better financed. Point one. Point two, millions of our small and medium enterprises are not even registered with the government. Can we please register them so that at least you know, okay, in this budget you provided a credit guarantee scheme. But who is the credit guarantee scheme going to go to except those whose enterprises whose names are registered in the MSME ministry? This is the second thing. The third thing is that this same MSME industry in the central government has had for the last 20 years a cluster development program, which not too many people know about. In this country, there are 5,500 manufacturing clusters spread across the whole country, which employ which essentially consist of MSMEs and which give most of the non-farm employment. I think we can fund that much better. We can actually design that much better. I mean, to my mind, the horizontal industrial policy that I've been talking about, that needs to go in precisely here. I mean, I don't much care for the employment-linked incentive scheme. I would much rather have, and I say this on the basis of historical evidence, because China had a phenomenal cluster development program. You won't believe what I'm about to say. China has 100 clusters which only produce socks. No wonder they are the world, all of us must be wearing Chinese socks. I won't be surprised right now. So that's the focus that needs to happen, but that's not a focus. And in addition, you can do the skilling at the cluster level.
Yes, I agree.
And these 5,000 clusters are spread across the peri-urban, the small towns of our country. And if we focus there, we will bring the girls in. The girls are all much better educated. If we did skilling for them there, their parents will allow them to go. They will not have to go to the city far away, and the parents will allow them. But the government has to listen to people like us. This is where we are not seeing the traction.
I have a statistic here with youth unemployment between 15 and 24. The unemployment exceeds 23%.
That's
between
right.
15 and 24.
That's
Only
right.
73 million out of 100 million urban workforce has a full-time job.
That's right. I mean, it is doubled.
You go to any, maybe not Delhi, but any small towns and certainly in the villages, you see, won't see the women outside, but all these young chaps hanging around.
They say 42% of graduates are unable to find a job.
Yeah.
Staggering. Youth
This is
unemployment
staggering.
And they are all
staggering.
getting better certified, better educated.
And 80% of the workforce is in the informal sector, as you say.
Yeah.
So where will you go to this? India Skills Report 2024 says 48.7% of Indian graduates are employable. The balance 52% are not.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here?
I remember one of these reports, very proudly said that, the employability thing has gone up from 42% to 44%, forgetting that meant 56% were not employable.
Exactly.
Right.
So what do I think we're in a mess, no?
And that's when they include unpaid labor in the
that's,
definition of
that's
employment.
That's the other big thing.
That's another big story. It's too technical, I won't get into it. But
No, but even in the education sector now, I say there are only contract jobs, not even contract jobs, ad hoc teachers, right? You get a certain basic salary and that's about it.
Yes,
no permanent job.
Yes,
How are you going to get people educated with these kind of people coming in to teach?
Right.
I mean, and this is higher education, in
Right.
the university level.
in very good colleges.
And very good
In
colleges.
Bombay, on the best colleges, lecturers are paid by the lecture.
Exactly. I think that this education policy and regulating education should just be done away with. We should have standards, right? And then people should let people invest in education. They will. Just give them some incentives instead of giving incentives to the corporate sector, which brings back nothing into our system. You give them 25% tax, 18% tax, what do they invest?
Indeed. I mean,
They don't invest.
absolutely. I agree with you.
So, our whole model of economic development, according to me, is skewed.
Absolutely.
It has to be bottom upwards, not top down.
Absolutely. Which is what the Chinese one was, the bottom-up one. Their education system is very much bottom-up.
All East Asian countries.
All East Asians, absolutely right. All. And because they had a strong education system, they then were able to build a very strong skill ecosystem as well. On top of that. And then, of course, they had an industrial policy plus an approach to generating jobs in the non-farm sector, especially in the labor-intensive sectors. You see, why can't we give more incentives for the 5 labor-intensive manufacturing sectors which account for 50% of manufacturing jobs? Food processing, furniture, textiles, garments, and one other, which I'm forgetting. So if we focus on leather and footwear,
Yes, very, very
these
important.
5 account for half of all manufacturing jobs. Why is the government not putting in really
ये
good
बताओ
packages.
economic survey में this gentleman, the
Andhra Krishnan.
gave some home truths to them.
Ananta.
Yeah.
Ananta.
And what do? They just ignored him in the budget.
Well, he mentioned that if you look at the budget and the speech, what is there in the numbers is a different story. In speech, there is all reference to labor-intensive thing like leather and all this. I was very surprised that for some reason textile got left out. I think I have to say this: his term has just been extended for 2 years. He's done a very good
He's
job.
done a very good job. I mean, when I read the
We have a
economic
very
survey,
good chief
yeah,
economic advisor.
exactly.
He may have.
He said, "Get off my back." They said, "Get off the people's back," right?
And he's, I think, doing a good
change
job.
the
And I
system.
hope
Credit to government.
Yes,
they, they allow him, they give him the space, the
Yes.
political space to say all these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's credit to government.
No, no,
and you
I
talk about the
think it's-
credit guarantee scheme. Well, there's going to be NPAs if you give credits without making sure that people, if the economy doesn't grow at that level,
This is the point.
that credit guarantee scheme will fail.
This is
But politics gets in the way. Somebody was telling me that from a southern state, they came to Delhi with a proposal along with a large foreign investor for a PLI in footwear. And later on, the investor was told that you'll get it if you set up your plant in UP or Gujarat.
No, but yeah, no?
So,
That's right.
so the politics just sort of gets in the way
Yeah,
of.
all new projects are going to Gujarat.
But we have to recognize that that's the nature of the beast. You know,
We have to
can't
find a
wring our
way
hands say, oh, politics getting in the way. It
No,
is.
no, we must change the beast.
But we know that that's
we
what
must
it
change
is.
the beast.
Well, I don't know how we should learn how to use
No, no,
politics to serve economic
No,
ends.
no. I think this is really, we are going all wrong. I mean, I think the fundamental duty
yes.
of people in politics is to think of the country more than they think of the party. And you're right, it's, you recognize the fact that that doesn't happen, but I think that the people of this country, through programs like this, should be told that, look, we're not going in the right direction. And that's a fact. And the kind of things that are happening in my country, in your country, are worries that are really worrisome, because all democratic institutions, right, the fundamentals of those institutions have been compromised. Courts do not stand up
Absolutely.
to the challenges that the political economy is faced with.
Totally.
And the principle of innocent till proved guilty is now subverted to
Fallen by
guilty
the
till it
wayside.
is gone by the wayside.
Yeah, reversed.
Now, I think that the courts must stand up to what's happening. The people of this country must stand up to what the politicians are doing. And all citizens of this country should realize that the future of our grandchildren is at stake.
And this future is right upon us in the following sense, that our demographic dividend, which we keep talking
We've
about,
lost
wearing-
it.
No, but it will be over by 2040,
I
in
agree.
15 years' time. I don't think our politicians are aware of this. We still keep talking about our being a young country. It's
No,
not
somebody
so.
said the other day that 3 bache hone chahiye.
I know. Well, 2 chief ministers in the south. But sir,
No, not chief minister, somebody else.
No,
Somebody
I know, I agree with you. But you see, there's one fact that all your listeners should be aware of, that half of our workforce is already at or over 45 years of age. In 15 years, when we will become an aging society, they will be all at retirement age. Half or more of our workforce. That means we are not a young workforce any longer.
And what will 6% growth do then?
No, it won't do it. So we have to grow between then and now,
Yeah.
now and then at 8% per annum. Otherwise, we will not even become by 2040 a
So
upper middle income
On
country,
that
forget high income.
On that optimistic note, sir, let's hope that the country works together, politicians, the opposition, the treasury benches work together for the future of our country. Thank you.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.